Hello there, and welcome to the first episode of my playthrough of the 2018 Harebrained Schemes BattleTech game. If you have been watching this channel for any amount of time, you will know that this is a channel dedicated to all things BattleTech, so it makes sense that this game would eventually make an appearance because, first of all, I love this game, and second of all, it's a very good game, so it's kind of natural that it would eventually make an appearance on this channel. Now, before I get into anything in regards what this episode is going to cover, I'm just going to give you a little synopsis on the kind of format of these videos and what the first three videos in particular will be like, because they are going to act almost as like tutorials and a little bit of a lore video. So just making you aware of that now, because if you want to actually watch the playthrough of the actual game itself, you want to skip to episode 3. That will be the first campaign mission, or the first priority mission. But just so you're aware, I will be running that as like an extension of the tutorial. So I'm going to be talking through in quite a lot of depth what I'm doing, like things like how indirect fire works and heat management works and things like that. So that will be a slightly longer episode than it usually would on the actual playthrough, for the simple reason that I'll be talking about what I am doing in that. So if you want to actually just start the playthrough itself, it's episode 3. If not though, if you want to come on this journey the whole way with me, then episode 1 and 2 will be broken down as follows. This first episode, I am going to discuss things going on like under the hood in this game. So things like the screen that you can see now is full of data, and the game really doesn't do a very good job of explaining to you what all this means. Things like what are mech tech points, how do your finances work, what is morale. Like, you kind of get a drip feed of these things, but it's just left to the player to go through and discover it for themselves, which is fine. But I am going to give a little bit of a breakdown of what all these things mean. So I'm going to talk a lot about finances as well and how to kind of balance your books in this game. The second part of this episode 1 will actually be about the some of the lore of BattleTech, a bit of a synopsis of the history and like timelines, the geography of the galaxy that we're in. If you're new to BattleTech or you don't really know much about BattleTech and you've just randomly picked up this game and are now looking for like let's plays on YouTube, you probably can realise quite early on that this game is very rich. It's got a lot of history behind it, and that's true. I think we're going on well over like 30 years now, if not nearly touching 40 years really. It depends kind of when you say BattleTech officially started, because there are lots of like legal problems that it had in its early days. Very long story, but it's long story short, it's a very, very old IP. There are hundreds of books and technical readouts and games, both board games and video games. So there is a lot going on, and I'm going to try and break that down as I would to somebody who had just come to me and said, so what is this BattleTech about? Can you sum it up for me in like 30 minutes? So I'm going to discuss, like I said, things like the geography, the great houses, a little bit of a timeline as well. And if you understand that, if you have a much better understanding of the lore, you'll have a much better experience playing this game, because it is very deep. So you'll start to understand things like what is lost tech, what are the great houses, who is Kerensky, he gets mentioned quite a bit in this, what is the Star League, that kind of thing. The next episode, so episode 2, I will actually be continuing the tutorial, but in that it's going to be like almost like an advanced tutorial, because I'm going to be dipping into the mech bay and discussing how all the features of this game work in regards like making your mechs work for you. Things like heat management, weapon loadouts, armor tonnage, how engines work, things like that. So it's going to be quite a detailed episode. I imagine that will be quite long as well, because there is a lot to talk about. This game is similar but not identical to tabletop classic BattleTech. It's very, very similar, but there are several differences. So if you play BattleTech on tabletop, you'll know what they are immediately. if you're only experiences with this game and you're thinking about getting into tabletop, then tabletop is slightly more complex, and obviously you have to do all the kind of math yourself. That can really scare people off, but it shouldn't. There's not that much math in BattleTech. It's basically just filling out dots on a sheet, and occasionally it will say like divide your tonnage by 5 to work out damage. And given that all mechs have like tonnage up from 20 tons to 100 tons, that's really not that difficult to do. So, like obviously the great thing about a computer game is that it does all that math for you like immediately, and you can just play the game and have fun. Although there is something to say about actually just sitting down with like a pen and paper and cranking the numbers a little bit. There is some joy in that, especially if you've got a friend group that like to do things like that. So that's kind of going to be the format of the first 2 episodes, which is kind of the real core tutorial. The third episode is, again, the actual first priority mission, which takes place here on Alloway. That's exactly where I am now. If I click on launch contract here, we'll go into that priority mission, but I'm not going to do that yet, obviously. And then I will kind of go into the actual gameplay tutorial. Even if you kind of just want to skip right to like the playthrough, I'd still advise that you watch that. It's the first priority mission, so it's kind of the technical start of things. And I do know quite a lot about this game, so you might just pick up one random fact on there that you didn't know about. So, yeah, well worth watching. Again, if you don't want to watch the tutorials, first 2 episodes, skip to that. Before I get into anything, though, which is kind of all the going under the hood on what's going on in like the background of this game, there are a couple of things that I want to discuss just in regards like the game itself and what I have like available to me here. So the first point to note is that there are no mods. At some time in the future I might get some of the mods and do like a playthrough in the mods, but as it stands at the moment, this is a completely like vanilla game. The only like extensions or extras is all the DLC, which I do have access to. So that's the urban setting. So basically we can fight on city like maps, which is great. I have like the heavy mech, is it heavy metal? I think they call it, something like that, where you get access to more mechs. And the final DLC, which is very, very good, which are called the Flashpoint Missions. And the Flashpoint Missions are basically when you finish the priority missions, of which there are 12. So we're going to do the first one in episode 3. As soon as I click launch contract there. When those finish, basically like little pings on your radar pop up across the map. And you can go to these and do like jobs for the great houses. And that's actually, I think, the best thing about this game. The Flashpoint missions are absolutely superb. It's very, very like what I'd call like real BattleTech. The priority missions are fine as well. It's just that the story is slightly cliched in my opinion, but that's fine. I mean, it's a computer game, so I'm not expecting Tolstoy level writing here or anything like that. But the Flashpoint missions to me are very, very fun because you basically just get to ping all over the galaxy doing random missions for crazy inner sphere people. So, and there is some, I think you do some jobs as well for like the Periphery Powers as well. But yeah, very, very fun, and I'll record all that. So it will almost be like 2 seasons. This game, the first season will be like the priority missions, and then the second season will be the Flashpoint missions. That kind of brings me, I suppose, to the format of how I'm going to like record going forward. So again, split it into those 2 seasons, but I'm not going to record everything. I've watched quite a few playthroughs of this game, and some are great and have like some will have like an interesting gimmick. Like for instance, there was one guy I saw on YouTube who was just playing this game through only with light mechs, and that was super interesting. He was very good at this game. There are some people as well that just kind of press record and just show everything, including like all the space travel and stuff like that, and I'm not going to do that. I've kind of conscientiously thought about this beforehand. What I've decided is that I'll record all the 12 priority missions, and I'll do like I'll spatter in like sporadic, like for want of a better term, stock taking missions where I'll do like a random mission and maybe talk about like new pieces of equipment, new mechs, maybe new like Mech Warriors that I've hired, things like that. So they will be like in between the priority missions. And my intention really is to kind of get all the priority missions done between like 15 and 20 episodes. And I'd imagine episodes will last anywhere between 45 minutes and an hour and 30 minutes, depending on like the length of the mission in question. Flashpoints are usually longer because they're like consecutive missions, so you might have to play 3 missions in one, so they may get between like, could be anywhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours for those. And I'll record all the flashpoints as well. Again, same premise with the flashpoints. Occasionally I might do a random mission in between. So I'm kind of hoping to get both, for want of a better term, sounds a bit pretentious this, but Season 1 and Season 2, get them all done between 40 and 50 episodes, I've estimated. So that's quite a lot of content. It takes a lot of the grind out of it for you. You can just kind of watch it, watch me play, watch me talk about the lore, things like that, without having to deal with me, like, you know, having streams of thought or just kind of sat here in long silences for 3 minutes. I'll kind of keep the airwaves occupied because, you know, I'll probably think about a topic to discuss a little bit before I kind of get into the gameplay, so I can discuss that as we go through. So that's kind of the format for everything. What I think I'm going to do right now, though, is actually discuss the difficulty settings that I have got the game on. For the simple reason that if you are an experienced player or an inexperienced player, I want you to know right now where my kind of mind is at and my headspace is at when playing this game, because you might be thinking, oh, these settings are too easy for me or something like that. So I'll give you the opportunity now to decide whether you want to continue watching or not. So the difficulty settings in this game are broken down into this box here, this orange box here, which you can't change. And then there's some areas that you can change as you go through the game. Full disclosure, I'm not going to change anything, so it will stay at this level throughout. In terms of like difficulty, I'd say I've probably got it on about a 7.5 out of 10, something like that. The last time I played this game through, I put it on much more challenging settings, but it was very, very grindy when I did that. Still managed to complete it fine. But yeah, because I'm recording this and I've got like another intention to speak about lore and things like that, I don't want to make it too grindy for me. I'd like to be able to, you know, maybe get like half a day in, do some random missions, and then record on an evening or something like that. As opposed to like me having to grind for 4 days to get the mech that I need that's going to help me complete this mission. So yeah. So things aren't probably as hard as they could be. They're certainly not as hard as they could be. So let's just go through these, just so you know. First point here is I've got unequipped mechs turned on. I would advise that you all do that. That basically means that when you destroy a mech and you get it salvaged, when you complete all the points of salvage you need to get a complete mech, if you have that switched off, it will come with all its stock weaponry, which is a bit of a cheat because you can then basically strip it of that stock weaponry and sell it, and just makes the game really not very enjoyable. So I'd certainly keep that turned on regardless of your experience levels in this game. It makes it far more fun, and yeah, you won't generate as many C-bills doing that, but again, it just makes for a better dynamic of gameplay. Related to that, parts for mech assembly, which I've got set on 4. I don't know if you can see that. My head may be in the way, so I'll talk through this. I think I am on the middle right of this screen, so I'll talk through these. Anyway, parts for mech assembly is 4. That can go up to 8 if you want to make it super difficult. That basically means the amount of points of salvage you need from a mech when you've destroyed it to create a full mech. You can also buy some of those salvage points in stores as well, so that's useful. 4, I think, is a clearly happy medium. If the total is, if the grand like maximum you can do is 8. The game actually does start on 3 though. Like that's what it kind of advises you start on. The reason why that's slightly too easy for me is because the maximum salvage that any mech can give you is 3, and that's if you destroy its head. I think I'm not really sure. You know, I'm not 100% sure how the kind of mechanics work on that. It might be like if you destroy a side torso, you get 2 points of salvage. If you destroy legs, you get 2 points of salvage. If you destroy the head, you get all 3 points of salvage. So this generally what I tend to do is early on in the game I'll try to do leg shots, because doing head shots is tiny. You get a tiny percentage of doing that successfully until your Mech Warriors get good enough to basically be able to do headshots. So I kind of, I don't know the exact equation that it uses. What I do know though is that you don't want to just keep coring out a mech. Coring out a mech is an expression when you just completely destroy a mech's center torso. If you do that, you get 1 point of salvage. But let's say you get lucky and you destroy a head and you get 3 points of salvage. If parts for mech assemblies is on 3, then you basically are able to get that mech immediately. That's as long as you have negotiated good enough salvage rights. That's another matter entirely, but you can potentially do that. And for me, that's slightly too easy. What I would prefer is, and 4 is a good way of doing that, is I could get a lucky headshot and get 3 points of salvage for this mech that I really want, but then I've got to get lucky again and either find a point of salvage in a store, or I've got to destroy another mech at the same variant of this mech at some time in the future to get the mech fully. I've got Ironman mode turned on. If you are new to this game, you certainly don't want to do that. Ironman mode is... I've done it before in Ironman mode, it's not too difficult. But basically what it says is that if you go bankrupt, you lose the game. The game just stops. If you lose a priority mission, you lose the game. So it's slightly more difficult. There's also no cheating with saves, so you can't go back in time if you mess things up and do a previous save, for the simple reason that there's only one save point. So if I exit the game just saves, so there is no cheating to be done. So I've got to keep my wits about me a little bit more when I'm playing Ironman mode. I've skipped the prologue. So, as I've said before, we are right on the cusp here of doing the first priority mission. Before that, there is quite a bit of grind to do. There are 3 prologue missions. Then you've got to do some random missions to generate the first priority mission. So I've done all that. We've gone right to the first priority mission. Enemy force strength I've kept on normal. I've done that for actually very good reason. I could quite easily play on I think it's be hard. Yeah, so hard means that you get heavier mechs thrown at you. In a way though, it's slightly cheaty, because it means that you'll be able to destroy heavier mechs early on, and I'll get better mechs because I'll get better salvage quite quickly. I want this game to be organic, and I want to be able to show and play as many of the mechs as I can. So having the enemy force on harder, yes, it makes the game harder, but it also kind of convolutes the dynamic of the way that I want to play this game and how I want to record it. So I've kept that to normal. Mech destruction I've turned off. That's, even for me, that's a little bit too much of a bridge too far, because that means if you destroy the center torso of a mech, you don't even get 1 point of salvage for it, which is absolutely brutal and very grindy. So especially early on, when your Mech Warriors just are not capable of destroying heads and legs. Well, you might get lucky, but it just means that you're picking up barely any salvage, which means you're gonna have to buy all or most of your salvage in the stores, which is quite expensive. So it's really, really difficult. Levels of salvage that I get after a mission I've just kept to normal, again, just to kind of keep the grind to a minimum. Lethality I have kept on. I'd advise you all do that as well, because this is BattleTech. We're not playing, I don't know, in the My Little Pony universe or something. BattleTech is a pretty brutal game, and in a pretty brutal universe. Lethality basically means, you see it there, when a Mech Warrior is incapacitated in combat, they will always be killed. So that means when they lose all their life points, they're dead. If you keep that turned off, there is a chance at the end of the mission that they might still be alive, but they'll be injured for a long time. The only person that doesn't apply to is your company mercenary commander. That commander will never be killed. They'll just be out of action for a long time if they get injured, for obvious reasons, because they're kind of central to the narrative. Advanced Mech Warriors I've got set to often, so that's the Mech Warriors that come against us. So that means that the mechs that I am fighting against will be, the Mech Warriors will have better piloting skills, better gunnery skills. I really, really like that. It makes much more of a challenge, and definitely want that on. If you're new to this game, you might want to just keep that to whatever the medium is, so just normal. Contract payment, I've got to normal as well for the same reasons of salvage, just don't want it to be too grindy. Mech Warrior progression I've got set to slow. Now, just to make sure you're aware of this, that's your Mech Warrior progression, so that's not anything to do with anything else in the game other than your Mech Warriors. And if you keep this to normal, you'll find that they level up like very, very quickly, and you probably have most people leveled up by the time you get like a half, 3/4 way through the game. That makes the game very boring, because if you've got Mech Warriors who have 10 out of 10 on all the skills trees, the game just becomes so easy, because you're just making like incredible shots. You can do headshots quite easily. It just makes it super, super easy. So if you keep it to slow, it makes the game a lot more organic. And I think, if I remember right, the last time I played this game through, I only had like, I think maybe 1 or 2 of my Mech Warriors like fully leveled up by the time I got into the very last mission. So you should try to do that as well. If you find that you're like 10 out of 10 for everything, then from the 4 skills trees, you'll just breeze through the game, and it just makes it very uncompetitive. No rare salvage, obviously I've got turned off. I'm not sure why anyone would want that turned on. Like, the joy of BattleTech is to destroy your enemies and capture their really cool weaponry. So absolutely, I've got that turned off. Anyway, they are the difficulty settings for this game, so hopefully that will kind of be where you are at as well in terms of play through. Hopefully that's not too easy or too difficult for you. So I think it's quite a nice one. That I kind of thought quite hard about the difficulty levels that I wanted to have. And I think that's kind of a nice, like, in between. Like, it's not too easy, not too tough, but it means that it's still competitive. So let's talk about the under the hood stuff that exists in this game, and we're going to start on this screen. So this is our Leopard. Eventually, after the 3rd priority mission, I think it is, we get gifted a lost tech ship called the Argo, and that will eventually change. It will, rather than Leopard, it will say Argo, and you also get access to an engineering tab down here. Can't obviously discuss that today because we don't have it, but at some point in the future, I'll do, in one of like the stock taking episodes, I'll probably do like a bit of an extended tutorial on what engineering is, which bits to kind of improve first on the Argo, because you can improve all manner of things on there, like your mech bays and medical facilities, and even things like libraries and gyms for like the crew and the Mech Warriors, so that morale can increase. So there's some fun stuff to do in there. But at the moment we are in a good old Leopard, and Leopards are like the Ford Escorts. I mean, that's what we call them in Britain. Anyway, they might be called something else elsewhere. But like the Ford Escorts of the BattleTech universe, like a very, very okay car that will get you from A to B. That's kind of what a Leopard is in BattleTech. It's maneuverable. It houses 4 live mechs, but you can keep mechs in cold storage. So presumably that's like in the bows of the ship somewhere hidden away. But you can keep you can keep 6 in active storage, but there are 4 bays. So like when you land, 4 mechs can jump out of it. That's called a lance. 4 mechs is a lance, and then presumably there are like 2 in the back section somewhere, like waiting to go. In terms of size, they're really quite small ships. I mean, not relative to us. Like, if this thing flew for our skies, we'd be like, whoa, that's huge. But in the BattleTech universe, where they've got these huge spaceships and drop ships, the Leopard's really just quite a small vehicle. It's kind of the very, very basic thing that a mercenary unit would use, gets them from point A to B and allows them to kind of get down to the surface of a planet and basically spit out 4 mechs to go and do the mission that it needs to do. Again, these doors, your usual mech will be approximately between 10 and 15 meters, something like that. So these doors are around, presuming they're about 15 meters high, something like that. So you can see that it's not like a huge ship or anything like that. In the top left here, you've got the name of your company. So my company are the Dust Counters, named, after I'm using the name of the mercenary unit I use on tabletop and the name of this channel. Their little logo here is similar somewhat to what I would use on tabletop, but obviously you've got limited choice. But it's close enough, and they do play in purple as well. So I did want like a badge that was purple, and I've got a purple tinge to it, so that's nice. In the top right corner here, we've got our finances. So you can see at the moment we have got 665,000 sea-bills. Sea-bills are the dollars of the BattleTech universe. There are plenty of other currencies. There are like great houses have their own currencies, but sea-bills are the ones that everyone wants because they're the ones that have got real worth behind it. Backed up by Comstar. Comstar are like the... just imagine a world where like Google and I don't know, Bank of America and eBay and Vodafone all kind of joined forces and created one giant like super corporate company that dealt with everything from like banking to communications to financing, everything else. And that is, Comstar are basically that, and it is as horrifying as it sounds. I mean, there's a reason why, like in the Western world, we have things like monopoly and merger commissions, because if you have a company that has that much power, they just undermine everything, including freedom of like expression and freedom of speech and political freedoms. And that's kind of what Comstar do. Like, if you don't agree with them, you tend to disappear. But one thing that they do have is that they have a very good currency because they control the communications networks. So if you think about it in terms of that, he or she who controls communication really has the power in a sprawling galaxy that is like BattleTech. Because if you stop people from being able to communicate with each other, they can't create any kind of tactical alliances or do any battlefield tactics or anything like that. So they're going to get absolutely stomped. Ergo, Comstar is incredibly powerful. They don't really make an appearance in this game. Occasionally they do. Occasionally you'll see like a Comstar lance. And some of your Mech Warriors as well can have a Comstar background or something like that. But you don't really see them doing much at all. They are omnipresent in this game because of the C-bill, but that's it really. Related to the almighty C-bill is the financial report here. Basically, every month you have got to pay salaries and upkeep for your mechs, and every month it will be this amount of money that comes out of your funds. So at the moment I'm paying 185,000 C-bills. So in 9 days that figure will be minused from the 665,000 C-bills. If I reach 0 C-bills, I lose the game. One little interesting quirk here that is really kind of hidden away, but it's interesting to keep an eye on, is this little report here with these 3 lights that are currently lit. That is how many months you are away from bankruptcy. So at the moment I can survive for 3 months before I go bankrupt, or 3 paydays or whatever you want to call it. Now, obviously, as I'm going through the game, you can do random missions for money. So you're not, that's how you generate cash. You do priority missions, you get really well paid as well. So after we've done this priority mission on Alloway, I think we'll get well over 1 million C-bills. So you want to kind of keep this to, in the early game anyway, I tried to keep it between 2 and 4 of these white dots here. If you find it turning yellow or, God forbid, red, then you're in a lot of trouble, and you need to get somewhere where there are missions and just spam and churn the missions and just get as much cash as you can, basically. You can also sell equipment, sell mechs and things like that if it gets desperate. But it's kind of a good little notifier just to show you if you are running into any kind of financial trouble. Next up here we've got morale. Morale is it's like an in-game feature. And there are 2 special moves that you can do. There's an offensive special move and a defensive special move that basically takes... It's a weird thing. It takes morale points, or it's got a special name and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But basically, it will cost you it's resolve. I think it's resolve. it takes like 30 resolve points to to do one of these special moves. And if we hover over it, it can probably tell us actually. Here we are. So at this level of morale, you will gain 15 resolve points per round of battle. So you can see that this can go up as well. So the top echelon of this, we get 35 resolve points per round of battle, and those like special moves that we can do are very, very good. They can turn the battle in your favour, put it that way. Next up here, 2 more things hidden away as well, which are really important. That's mech tech points and medical points. Mech tech points are basically just how quickly your mech techs can do repairs and refits on your mechs. So for instance, if you wanted to like change the loadout and put other equipment on there, the higher that figure, the quicker they'll do it. Medical points, same kind of premise, but it's if a Mech Warrior gets injured. So let's say they get like, if you get like 1 headshot in, that doesn't kill you. Let's say like a bullet hits the head of the mech, it will automatically hit the Mech Warrior and injure them, even if it might be a small injury, like they might like burn their hand or something like that, and they'll be out for several days. Obviously, the higher your medical points are, the quicker they'll come back because the better medical facilities you've got. Now, in the Leopard, we can't change these. It always stays at 4 and 6. But when you get the Argo, you can basically make really cool improvements, like get better mech bays, for instance, and that will increase your medical points. In the middle here, we have got this is the time that we have spent in game. So currently I'm 8 weeks and 3 days in, which is really quite early on. I've managed to get here very, very quickly. Not sure how I've done that. I thought I probably would have taken me at least like 4 months to kind of get to this point, because you want to do a little bit of grind to get some experience for your Mech Warriors and kind of get some decent, mechs together so you can do the first priority mission, but managed to do it very, very quickly. This play button is something you should really never touch. If I click this, which I'm not going to do, it will actually just, the clock will start to tick, so it will go from 8 weeks, 3 days to 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, then we'll go into week 9. The reason why you would do that is if you need to repair mechs. And let's say you've got 1 mech in the mech bay and you want to field a full lance and you've got 3 active. If you were kind of, here and now to do the job, and it was going to take 4 days for repair, which it would tell you in your timeline up here, you'd basically click play for 4 days and then you'd have access to all the mechs. The reason why that's a terrible idea, though, is because in this game the 2 resources are C-bills and time. And as you can see by what I've said previously, because every 30 days money is taken out of our account to pay the salaries and for upkeep, so you really don't want to press that because it is just burning a resource. Instead, what you do is you do your refits of your mechs when you're traveling to other systems, which segues me nicely to the point down here, which is you can see there are 3 tabs. There's orbit, transit and jump ship. We're currently in orbit of the planet. If, though, I went into the navigation tab and went to another system, like the whole Jean-Luc Picard engage, we'd then transit in our Leopard to the jump ship, and then we'd attach ourselves to the jump ship, and the jump ship would jump to another system. That's how all BattleTech logistics work. It's not like, I've already said, talk about Star Trek, so we'll use that analogy. In Star Trek, the captain says engage, warp thrusters kind of get turned on, and then all of a sudden you're in a different part of space. That doesn't exist in BattleTech. The jump ships do that. The jump ship have that kind of capacity to jump from one star system to another, but the smaller ships don't. So the Leopard has to burn its thrust engines to get to wherever the jump point is, and then attach itself to the jump ship, and then flies away to Alpha Centauri or wherever the hell it's going. So when you're doing that, when you're in transit, when you're burning your thrusters through a system, or whether you're on the jump ship going from one system to another, that's where you want to be repairing your mechs. Really important that as well. If you don't get to grips with that quite early on, you'll suffer. You'll start having things in the mech bay for days and days, especially early on, because your mech tech points are so low. So even doing basic repairs, putting a medium laser on a mech might take 2 or 3 days. Eventually, when you get the Argo, things happen a lot quicker. But for now, be very, very careful with that and stay away from that play button if you can. So I think that's everything on here. Next up, let's just nip into... we'll go into the captain quarters first, I think. Lots of things you can do in here, so you can like change the name of your mercenary outfit, change your colour scheme, that kind of thing, so that's all good. We've also got like reputation section here. This is basically your reputation with the mercenary review board. It's not really important for this game. Like the higher that goes, that you can occasionally like hire a really skilled Mech Warrior, who might not come to you if you don't have a good enough mercenary review board like rated number. So at the moment it's low, obviously, because we've just started the game, but that will increase as we go through. You've then, more importantly, got like reputations with the powers in this game. So here we have got the 5 great inner sphere houses. So that's the Fed Sons, Draconis Combine, Capellan Confederation, Free Worlds League, and Lyran Commonwealth. Then there are 2 major periphery powers. That's the Taurian, Concordat, and the Magistracy of Canopus. And then there are the local pirate organisation. There is another power in this game as well that will appear eventually. That's the Aries Restoration, but they're not here just yet. Because that's like our priority client. That's who we are helping to kind of get their like property back, or their throne back. But they're not here just yet. And as you do jobs for these powers, you will get either an improved or a penaltied score. So at the moment, you see, for instance, we're kind of just like indifferent with everyone apart from the pilots. I've obviously done a few missions against them, so we're currently disliked with the pirates. Everyone else is just indifferent to us. Give you a bit of a hint, a bit of a tip in this game. It's quite useful early on to befriend the Capellans. Which will probably make people disgusted because the Capellans are not very well liked in BattleTech, but they've got such a big area of space in terms of the map in this game. They're actually the smallest inner sphere power by some way, like the weakest industrially, but in this game they've got like the biggest chunk of the map, which means that you can do a lot of work for them because they tend to have a lot of missions in this particular game, like that you can do, especially like in the you can't get into their like land, so to speak, or into their empire in the when you're doing the priority missions, but you're on the edge of their like empire in the periphery, so you do find a lot of systems that have got like a Capellan influence. If you kind of make friends with them, you can basically do a lot more missions and for them, and then you get paid better because of that. So if you can get this up to like around like 3/4 weight or something like that, you might get like an extra 10-15% on your payouts. And like I said, there are more Capellan missions really than any other inner sphere power. That's my experience anyway. That might just be like psychosomatic because you tend to spend a lot of time around like the edge of the Capellans. There might just be as many Free Worlds League or just as many Fed Sons missions, but I just think the Capellans are like the path of least resistance to make money early on. What else here? So yeah, there's nothing much to say other than like eventually if your reputation becomes good enough, you can ally with a faction. If you do that, you will then automatically become the enemies of all that faction's enemies. So for instance, the Fed Sons. Here, the Fed Sons, as you can see. You know it's serious when I've got my Fed Sons t-shirt on. The Fed Sons traditionally are enemies of the Draconis Combine, the Capellans, and the Taureans. Kind of at this time period, they've just like cemented a very informal like relationship with the Lyran Commonwealth. So they're kind of allies with the Lyran Commonwealth. Free Worlds League, they don't have that much animosity towards either. They don't share a border, so that makes a big difference. So so like if you go with the Federated Sons, you will then not be able to do anything for the Draconis Combine, the Capellans, or the Taureans because they don't like one another. Right, what have we got next? So let's come out of reputation here, and finances. This is the important thing, really. So at the moment, our costs are quite low because we've only got a Leopard and we've only got 4 mechs, and I've only got 4 Mech Warriors. You get a list here of all your so there's estimated operating costs. At the moment, we owe the bank some money, so we have to pay them 70,000 C-bills every month. That changes. Eventually we pay that debt off, and instead we have like a generic like Argo cost, because the Argo is such a better ship. It's obviously got better catering, better electronic systems, so it's cost more money to run. So eventually that kind of never goes away, that random cost, but it just turns into a different thing. I've then got the 4 mechs here. So this is Vixen, Bugbear, Buckaroo and Oscar. And you pay a statutory like 12,000 C-bills a month just to keep them operating. So presumably that's for like ammo, paint, damaged electronics, decent sound system, cigarette lighter, things like that. And then as well you've got your Mech Warriors. Now I don't pay my company commander, presumably he's got share options, maybe. But we have 3 here. That's Darkstar, Vortex and Code. You'll have noted, if you've played this game before, I don't have any of the stock Mech Warriors. I've dismissed all them. I do that purposefully because I think it's too easy with those, and it's a bit boring because you can't kind of edit them. Instead, I only choose like raw recruits and then build them up, and it means that you can customise those, which is a lot more fun. But we'll talk about that when I get into the barracks section. So that's everything in the captain's quarters. Next up, I think I will go into the command center. Command center is where the magic happens. Is where you basically choose to do missions and where you make money. This is at the moment I can't really show you much on here because I'm like committed to doing this mission on Axelis. They paid me my transport fee to get to this system, so I've got to do that. I think I can negotiate another contract, but it might like damage my relationship with, in this case it's the Magistrates of Canopus that we're doing this priority mission for, so I don't want to do that. But there are these, the priority missions are at the top there. There are also these like random missions. You get like a skull rating, so at the moment very low. It's like between half a skull and 1 skull, and you can see there are 2 here. There's a battle there's 2 battles, both in the desert. And you can basically do a little bit of like rejigging on how much money you get paid or how much salvage. So the kind of stock variant for this mission, so you can destroy 207,000 C-bills, 2 points of chosen salvage and 11 random points of salvage. You can switch that around a little bit, so you can go like full salvage, in which case you might get 3 and 15, or you can go full cash, in which case you might get 300,000 C-bills and only 3 random points of salvage. So you can, mess around with those sliders. The meta in this game, which I've seen a lot of people say, is, you only want salvage, just choose salvage. I actually don't agree with that at all. I think I often, especially in the early game, will actually max out cash, because there are places you can get really decent equipment in store that you just can't get from salvage. Things like UAC weaponry, things like heat banks, heat exchangers, which I'm not going to talk about right now, but you can't get them from salvage. So if you want them, you need to buy them, and that's why I want cash early on, because it's good to get some of those good weapons early on. Also kind of takes the pressure off you in terms of like your overall finances and like the money coming out of your account every month. So don't be scared to do that. Like the meta, I think, maybe I'm watching videos that are older and that was the case when this game first came out. Maybe there's been a patch that's changed this, but I think going for pay is actually a pretty good option in like a lot of circumstances. Again, especially early on, because so many of the missions you might get like 2 vehicles and 2 light mechs. Do you necessarily want to have like a torso of a Lotus or a Locus or a Flea or a Commando, because that's probably what you're getting thrown against you? Or would you rather just have cash so that you can buy a better weapon in the store? That would be my kind of way of thinking anyway. Next up, I'm going to go into the barracks and just introduce you very quickly to the current Dust Counters that I have on the books. So this is our company commander. This is Oculus, which is his call sign. His name is Lemuel Durant. I have been writing for the Dust Counters and Oculus since I was like a teenager, although I had a huge hiatus from BattleTech. Literally huge. I mean, talking 15 plus years, but I used to write a lot for them when I was a kid. They were like my tabletop mercenary unit, and I've kind of reimagined that with the new Catalyst Games Lab, like can't say that word, like all the new sculpts that have come out for the mechs, which are wonderful. You should check that out if you haven't. If you've got any inclination of getting into the actual tabletop game, now's kind of the time. It's still difficult to get because it's so popular and it sells out very quickly, but the new sculpts are mwah, absolutely beautiful. And I've I've been involved in Kickstarters. I've got lots of the like models, and I have given a percentage of those over to the Dust Counters, and I've kind of put them back on tabletop using those new sculpts. So Lemuel has always been the company commander. He was the founder. He actually founded it with his cousin, a lady called Samantha Durant, who may make an appearance in this game. If I can find a Federated Sons lady with a noble background, then that lady can be Samantha Durant, and then I can customise her to be Samantha. But at the moment, Samantha is obviously still back in Fed Sons territory, thinking that her crazy cousin is off doing shenanigans on the periphery, and she don't want to be involved in it. So occasionally what I'll do is, if I find someone that fits one of my kind of stock characters that I've got in the Dust Counters, I will create them and add them to this game. At the moment, there is no one. These are all just random characters that I have made up for the purposes of this, apart from Lemuel, obviously. He's an old boy for me. He's been my touchstone for BattleTech for many years. In terms of his service record, he's Davian, obviously. He's from luckily enough, he's from a system called Mendham, which actually appears in this game, so that's good. Freelance military, loner, noble family. Freelance military and loner, you decide them to kind of get some extra skills on the skills tree. Just in terms of the skills tree, I'll cover this very quickly. We are in a tutorial mode here, so there are 4 of them. There's gunnery, pirating, that'd be cool. Gunnery, piloting, guts, and tactics. Each one of these, when you gain enough XP, you can buy one of these points, and at certain points you get a special skill. So you can see at the moment Lemuel has got a special skill of sensor lock. We'll talk about this when I do the 3rd tutorial episode, and I'll show you how that works. I'm not going to go into it now. What you can do though, you can choose 3 of these overall. You choose 2 from this tree here, this vertical tree, and you choose 1 from this vertical tree here. They have to be related. So for instance, Oculus will definitely go down the gunnery and tactics skill. My kind of inclination for him is to do 2 for gunnery and 1 for tactics, but they must relate to each other. So you can't do 1 for gunnery, 1 for tactics, and then have the 3rd skill at piloting. The 3rd skill you take must be from the gunnery or the tactics skill. And they're all really powerful. Again, I'm not going to talk about them now. As I get them, I'll probably discuss them as we go through the game. I've got this on slow XP as well, so you can see that it probably costs, if you've got it on set to normal speed, your probable costs for buying these points are considerably lower, so that's why mine is slightly higher. Your total XP is down here, so at the moment I've got 300, so I need another 600 and I can buy a piloting or a gut skill. There are also, my head might be covering up some of these, but there are some. We'll deal with tactics. I don't think my head will be in front of tactics, but you see in tactics it says -1 indirect fire penalty and 45 meter minimum range. That's quite complex. I mean, I know what that means, but you may not. It's some weaponry has a penalty at short range, like a PPC. So if you go too close to your opponent, presume that's because the recoils, as the PPC is this huge particle projectile cannon, and if you're too close to it, it'll probably just won't shoot it where you need to shoot it, so it's harder to target. If you're further back though, you can basically do a better shot. Getting the 45 meter minimum range gives you a little bit of an improvement on that. And indirect fire is about LRMs. So if you are LRMs, long range missiles, if you're behind a building and you can't directly see an enemy, but one of your team members or your lance members can see that opponent, you can fire your LRMs over the obstacle to hit the weapon. But you do take a pretty nasty penalty if you do that. This means that penalty is reduced. Minus figures in BattleTech are always good and positive figures are always bad. So -1 to indirect fire is good. If it was a +1, it would be bad. It's just how the dice rolls work, and they've kind of on tabletop they've kind of mimicked that in this game system. So you'll hear me say that a lot. I'll say, we're a -2 to hit or something like that, and that's a good thing. So just keep that in mind. Not much else to say here really. I'll talk about as the pilots develop, or the mech. You shouldn't really call them pilots. They are Mech Warriors, but they do piloting. so sometimes that kind of shoots into my brain. Yeah, as the Mech Warriors progress, I will talk about and say, oh, I've now got 7 on the piloting tree, and this gives me this kind of bonus, which you can see in this this column here. What I'm going to do very quickly, I'm going to introduce you to each of the other 3 members of the Dust Counters, and then I'm going to go into navigation section and talk a little bit about lore, and then I'll finish up the video. So first up, we have got Code.
Good to go.
This is Hantu Zhao. They've basically got no skills to speak of at the moment because I bought them all as recruits and customised them. His service record is quite interesting, actually. He's athletic. I don't know I don't know if there's any bonuses you get for someone being athletic. I've not seen any, I don't think, in this game, but there you go. He likes sports and whatever else. He's a Capellan. He's a Comstar Acolyte, or an Adept. In a Sphere, yes, of course, because he's a Capellan. And he's a Technician. The Technician one there is really, really quite good to get, because as you're flying through space, you get like narrative scenarios thrown at you and you have to make a choice. And occasionally you might find this chap, Code, like fiddling around with an M-laser. And if you kind of say to him, yes, continue fiddling around with M-laser, he may make a better M-laser. And he's got a higher chance of doing that because he is a Technician. So there are certain attributes here that will kind of feed into those like narrative scenarios that you come across. You can see here he's got a bio as well, so he was a Lao servitor. House Liao, it can be quite confusing to new players, but Capellans are like the Empire, the Capellan Confederation, and Lao is the ruling house, so House Liao. And a Lao servitor is, it tells you there, life as a servitor is the barest step above chattel slavery. The Capellans are kind of always famously called like space communists or space North Korea or something like that. That's why a lot of people don't like them. I've got mixed feelings about the Capellans. I love their mechs. Not particularly keen on what they do in the BattleTech universe though. But this guy had a tough start. That's what it's saying. He probably got away, managed to get into a Comstar organisation, like a regional Comstar office complex or something like that, and got a Technician qualification. And I've kind of given him like, he's got a little barcode tattoo. It's like, that's kind of how I'd see Comstar acolytes, like being stamped with rather than being given a name, he's just given a code, ergo his name, or a number even. So that's Hantu Zhao. Next up we've got Darkstar. And this is Tariq Cortez. Again, very, very low on the skills tree. Although I think he is him and Vortex are actually equally good. His code's slightly worse than everyone else. But Darkstar's pretty good for this stage in the game. Not too bad at all. Got decent gunnery skills. In terms of his service record, he is an Aurigan. He's a Klutz. He's military, periphery. This is weird. I don't know why it says like periphery and Aurigan. Like the Auriganer is in the periphery, so I don't know why it needs to emphasise his periphery. And he's a spacer. Now, because this game eventually does become the like story of the Aurigan restoration, I thought it was really important to have an Aurigan on the book. So this is Tariq Darkstar. I've kind of called him Darkstar because he was an enlisted Navy recruit, so he's flying through space, and he's got the space tag there. He looks a little bit emo as well. He's got like emo haircut going on, and he looks very moody. So he is quite an interesting character as well. This Klutz situation, like eventually I will get like a narrative story about that. Like, oh, people are sick of him, and he's like destroying things by bumping into them and things like that. So it can like either improve your morale or damage your morale depending on what you pick. I think the game like rolls a dice for you as well, and then you get like something happens because of the choice you've made. And then finally we've got Vortex.
Yes, Commander.
And this is Serbian Falacroft. I don't know where that name came from, but it just sounds cool. So I'm quite glad that I came up with that. Serbian, I tend to use like a mixture of real names and like made up names, and Serbian might be a real name, but it just sounds cool. He looks cool as well, and he looks cool because he is a Canopian, and he's an ability. and he's Canopian nobility. And he's got this as well. This okay, I'll read this out. Not all kinds of noble families are destined to inherit. Younger siblings are often cut loose and must fend for themselves, seeking mercantile or military careers. So this guy was noble, but kind of got cast adrift. Kind of like what happens to Lemuel in this game, because he's kind of he's not an outcast, but he's kind of trying to make his own way. He doesn't have many attributes other than the nobility tag. The Canopians, though, and I'll talk about these when I go into the navigation tab, because they're very, very important in this game. They're actually our benefactors at this point. Canopians are, at the same time, interesting and terrifying. It's kind of like a feminist matriarchy. It's a very weird civilization. Not as progressive as you probably think. They're pretty awful, in like the BattleTech universe, but very interesting nonetheless. And I really did want... I want all the Periphery Powers like represented on my kind of Mech Warrior team. So I want a Taurian as well. So that'd be a Taurian, a Canopian, and an Aurigan. They're the three Periphery Powers that we deal with. And this is the story of that kind of neck of the woods. The Aurigan restoration and the Taureans. No spoilers. The Taureans do get involved very heavily in this game, as do the Canopians. So that's the Dust Counters at the moment. As I get more Dust Counters or Mech Warriors, I'll kind of talk briefly about what each one, their skills and their backgrounds and things like that. And if there are any developments during the stock taking episodes, I might say, oh, look, he's now lost his Klutz tag, or he's gained this tag, or whatever else. I'm also going to try and keep it as interesting as possible. So I don't want like a lot of goody two-shoes on the books. I want some pretty crazy, nasty people on there as well, just to kind of keep the mix a little bit interesting. So let's go into the navigation tab now. We can discuss a little bit about lore. So here we are. First time I've been into it by the looks of it. So here we go. Right, now. I was saying that because it came up with that little help screen. I've not seen that for a long time, so I've obviously not been into this section yet. Now, you can see there's this map. I'll zoom out as far as I can. We are in now, just in terms of the geography of BattleTech, we're in the very southern point of the map. Again, I know we're in space, so north, south, east and west doesn't really apply. But if you look top down on a map of the inner sphere and the periphery, we're in the southern point of that. This is the very southern point of the Capellan space. There's a little bit of Free Worlds League, and then there's a little bit of the Fed Suns as well. But generally this game takes place in and around this area here, which I'm circling with the mouse. Now at the moment we're in trouble with the banks, so this area here with these 4 systems, we can't leave this until we finish the first priority mission, because the banks are fearing that we might cut and run. But as soon as we do this first priority mission, we can actually go anywhere in the periphery. So that's anywhere in this uncoloured area of space. We can't go into, for some weird reason, I don't know why this is, we can't go into Canopian space, even though they're kind of our allies, but we can go into Taurian space. Not yet. When we've done this first mission, you can go there. Weird. And then all the priority missions actually take place in the Aurigan reach here. You're not allowed to go into anything with the inner sphere, so that's these 3 coloured areas here, until we finish the priority missions. So we are limited to this region. The periphery is... I'm hesitant to say it's the Mad Max of BattleTech universe. A lot of crazy stuff does happen here. There's a lot of religious cults and weird and wonderful proto-civilizations and dictatorships and theocracies. Everything and anything will be in this area of space. Some systems... let's go to one that's not abandoned. So here we are. Let's just look at Paia. This is right on the border of the Capellan space here. So if you kind of go to these areas, it tells you who is active here. So in this case, it's the Capellans, the Magistracy of Canopus, there's local government and pirates, and each one has different people engaged, and it usually is reflective of its geography. So in this case, for instance, there are Taureans in Gauchin, because it's right on the Taurian border. There's also Magistracy of Canopus, local government, and pirates as well. local governments can be good or evil. You don't know. You can do jobs for them. Sometimes you do jobs against them. Whatever else. Some of these systems are abandoned. It's also worth noting. I mean, you get a little synopsis. The synopses are interesting if you're interested in BattleTech, because there'll be lots of little snippets in there of lore. But the one thing that you really want to look out for is this attribute section here. So let's just click on Clough's Stand, which is here. Clough's Stand is actually a really good system early on, because you can see it has megacity, it has manufacturing, it's rich. What else does it have? Oh, it has a black market as well. Now, you can only get access to the black market if you befriend the pirates, so you won't get that early on. But Clough's Stand, because it's got the manufacturing tab, you can actually pick up decent heat systems here. So you can pick up things like heat banks, which are great, and exchangers. Maybe as well, you might look out and get a double heat sink, but that, I don't know if they necessarily appear there. They may only appear in like the old Star League locations, places like here, I think. Yeah, Kimmy, former Star League president, so occasionally you get a decent like double heat sink, or even S-Pulse or M-Pulse or L-Pulse weaponry can appear there. So it's weird and wonderful. I don't think there's it spawns randomly, so you have a higher chance of having better spawns in certain systems, or specific things will spawn, like in Kimmy, where it's got the former Star League presence. You might get lucky and pick something like a Gauss rifle up, or like I said, pulse weaponry, things like that. If you go to like the abandoned systems, so let's try to find one here. Here we are. Pertalada is abandoned. Now, don't dismiss these, because occasionally you can find like UAC weaponry in abandoned system. I have no idea why, because UAC weaponry, which is ultra autocannon weaponry, best weaponry in the game, it's lost tech, and yet some like random dude is selling it like out of the back of a truck on an abandoned system, because you'll go to these places sometimes and there'll only be UAC weaponry there, or like really decent AC and UAC weaponry. I don't know how that works, but don't dismiss them is what I'm saying. Occasionally do go to the abandoned system. You can pick up nice finds there. Not much more to say really in terms of the kind of dynamic of what's going on with the gameplay. I mean, you click on a system, and if you can get there, you click on travel. We can't travel there at the moment, but we can travel to Detroit here and it tells us how many days and how much it costs to do that. These days, that like ratio is actually quite accurate. So it would, like going to the system next to you might take somewhere between 13 and 25 days in BattleTech, something like that on a jump ship, so it's quite accurate. And obviously the farther away you travel, the longer it takes. I can't show you that at the moment, I can't go anywhere, but if that might take, I don't know, like 60 days to get to Gauchin or something like that. I'm not too sure. So, lore. Let's talk very quickly about lore. I'm going to have another drink first. So, BattleTech, as I've alluded to, is an incredibly rich universe. There is a lot going on, and this game is just a snippet of that. This game takes place in 3025 or thereabouts, and 3025 is one of my favourite eras in BattleTech. It's a bit of a dark age, and I shouldn't really say that. Dark Age is another time period in BattleTech after this, and it's a very unpopular time period. It nearly destroyed BattleTech actually as an IP. It's awful, so we won't talk about that. But it's a Dark Age in like the very general sense of the word, like the fall of the Roman Empire and its aftermath-esque Dark Age. But important to know, in 3025 we're kind of coming out of that Dark Age, so things are starting to be rediscovered, like lost tech, which is lost technology from the Star League era, which I'll talk about in a second. But just keep in mind that like everything going on in this game, like the priority missions that you're a part of, the restoration, the Regan of restoration, there's kind of a political philosophy element to it as well. Like Lady Arano, who is our like main client, she has like a notion of like society building, and she wants to improve things, and she wants to kind of give her people representation, things like that. And again, that's kind of reflective of the time period that we are coming out of and going into. So this game really does that very well. It gets BattleTech correct and right in terms of its like aesthetic, in terms of its like feel. It's very, very good. it's something I'm very critical of with something like Mech Warrior 5, which is a perfectly serviceable game. I've played it a little bit recently, and they've put patches in it, and they've had DLC, which has made the game very good now, I think, or at least good. But it feels wrong because you start that game in 3015, and 3015 should be like more Dark Age than this, and yet everything seems very shiny and new. And in this game, it doesn't. In this game, the mechs look like worn out and, you know, like, and they should, because some of the mechs that you are like rocking are like 500 years old, right? So they should look like absolutely chewed up, and like they've had leg replacements and hip actuator replacements, and they've got battle scarring and everything else. It should look like that. Like, no paint job can hide that, right? Like, these are old battered machines that have been through a lot. So, you know, like, this area of battle, or this era of BattleTech is super interesting. And I'd probably say it's my second favourite. I think my first favourite is the Clan Invasion, which happens in 3050. Yeah, it's very, very close between those two. I love the Clan Invasion because I was a kid during the Clan Invasion, so I've got like a special place for it in my heart. I know a lot of like really older players who've played it since like the 80s hate the Clan Invasion. It was like, oh, they've killed BattleTech and they've like overpowered the clans and yada yada. But for this period of time, there are no clans. We're kind of in the back end of the Dark Age, so whatever. So I think what I'm going to do first is discuss a little bit of a timeline for BattleTech and how it fits into this game specifically. So to do this, we're going to go, and I'll do this quickly. No, I'm not going to spend too much time doing the lore, so this video won't go on too much longer. But we go back really to 2315, which is the start of the Terran I can never say this word, homogeny. There are many ways to say it. I'll say homogeny from here on out. The Terran homogeny is like the systems in and around Earth, so things like Alpha Centauri, for instance. And this was a state in its own right, and it was, for want of a better term, it was like a centralized state of humanity, because before that, like when space travel started to be a thing, humanity just kind of exploded out, which we are right on the southern tip of it here. If you kind of keep going north on this map, you'll eventually get to Earth. So that's like in the middle of all this, as you'd expect, because the kind of diaspora goes outwards. And the Terran homogeny is kind of it is the most powerful, and it is the thing that kind of unifies all the great houses under the Star League, which I'll talk about in a second. It doesn't exist in this time period. It gets destroyed after the Amaris Civil War, but what you then have, so that's 2315, but in and around this time period, a little bit before and a little bit after, you have the creation of the Great Inner Sphere houses. So this is the Free Worlds League, which are these chaps here. This was established in 2271. House Marek are their rulers, and their capital is Artreus, which I don't think appears on this map. I think it's up here somewhere. The Federated Sons are then the second oldest of the great houses. This is the Fed Sons here. Federated Sons started in 2317 by House Davian, and the capital is New Avalon, and that's way up, like into the north here, like right in the middle of Federated Sun space. Fed Sons are the biggest, and at this time the most powerful. It kind of changes, like the power dynamics change, but at this time they're the most powerful house. Like they've got the most systems. Next up we have the Draconis Combine, who don't appear on this map. They're in like the northeast segment of this map. Draconis Combine started in 2319 by House Karita. Their capital world is Luthien. Then in 2340 we have the creation of the Lyran Commonwealth under House Steiner, and their capital world is Tharkad. And finally we have the youngest of the Inner Sphere houses, which is the Capellan Confederation, 2366, established by House Liao, and their capital is Xi'an, which Xi'an may appear. No, I think it's slightly more like in a spiral. Yeah, I think it is. I think it's not too far. It might be like here, something like that. So that's the Inner Sphere powers. They all have their own like weird idiosyncrasies. I'll very quickly touch on that. So, and I'll deal with chronological order here. So Free Worlds League are like Austro-Hungarians. And when I say that, that's not to say that everyone in the Free Worlds League is Austro-Hungarian. They're not. It's kind of like House Marek, their ruling like power. He's affiliated to maybe like a Hungarian dynasty or something like that. But every like race, colour and creed that's ever existed will be in every Innisphere Power house, because it's a huge area of space, huge empires. So, but it's just kind of, it's like their style and culture. So you can see by their like, their logo there, it's like the Imperial Eagle type thing, so it looks Eastern European. They're a very interesting power of the Free Worlds League. They are, for want of a better term, like the only ununified of the Innisphere powers. It's kind of like a collaboration. Think of it like in America, like the federal system. You've got like the federal government and the state system underneath that. Kind of the same in the Free Worlds League, and which can be both a positive and a negative for them. Negative because they're not that centralised, but positive because they've got like quite an entrenched like identity, and like they're not like slaves to the state. So they're an interesting place at the Free Worlds League. Fed Sons are, you can probably see by their little logo there, which is like the the sword and the sun. They're almost like knights errant in space. They kind of are associated to like Western Europe, like Britain and France. For want of a better term, they're like the good guys in BattleTech, but not really. In fact, if you kind of know their history, they're just as like Machiavellian and horrible as all the other powers, but they just have like good PR. So, and they've got a cool logo, and but they're not. They do care about their people though, or they try to care. Like people get like relatively decent education, and they'll try to protect their, like citizens, things like that. But they still have their problems, so it's not, like an amazingly progressive, amazing society where everyone lives in peace and harmony and everything like that. But they do okay. My faction of choice, anyway, what I gravitated towards when I was a kid. And just out of interest for you all here, Mendham. This is the world where the Dust Counters come from. This is where Lemuel Durant comes from, and he's lucky enough that it's in this particular game, because about maybe 80% of Federated Sun space here is actually being cut off. So he had a tiny percentage chance of his home world being here, and it is. So that's great. I think actually one of the Flashpoint missions take place on Mendham, so that'll be interesting. It's in an area of space. This area here is called the Capellan March. It's occupied and owned, for want of a better term, by the Fed Sons, but it's like the conflict zone with the Capellans. Next up, we got the Draconis Combine. The Draconis Combine, I think, they're not on this map. I'll find them so I can show you their logo. Here they are. Now, Draconis Combine are, for me, the most interesting power in BattleTech. They are Japanese feudalists, which is probably as crazy as it sounds. What you find in BattleTech is all the Innisphere powers, and the Periphery as well, they've all got like really weird quirks, and that's because they don't really have an option, because it takes so long to travel anyway. If you want to kind of create an empire, you probably do have to have like an obsolete system where people are controlled and manipulated, like whether it's like the Fed Sons, who have like almost like a monastic system, or the Capellans, who have space communism, or the Draconis Combine, who have Japanese feudalism. But it is a pretty horrible place. They tend to be like the real antagonists of BattleTech, certainly before the clans make an appearance in 3050. But the Draconis Combine, I've got to be honest and say, they are so cool. I mean, they've got like samurai warriors as Mech Warriors, carry like samurai swords. They're very cool. But in terms of the lore and what they get up to, pretty awful, to be honest. Next up, we've got the Lyran Commonwealth. They should be in and around listed here. There they are. The Lyran Commonwealth are basically space Germans. Very industrialised, very rich. I think the two richest factions are the Lyran Commonwealth and the Free Worlds League. Both got like very well known for like trade, but Lyran Commonwealth is specifically known for its industry. Tend to use like assault mechs. They do have light mechs. Eventually, they get so badly beaten by the Karita, by the two real like iconic Karita light mechs, so the Jenna and the Panther, both which are in this game. And they basically like take the wrecking ball to like the Lyran Commonwealth big assault mechs. So the Lyran Commonwealth eventually creates something called the Wolfhound, which is a 35-ton mech with 3 M lasers and an L laser. It's probably the best light mech. It doesn't appear in this game because it doesn't exist yet. But that's even their light mech is like an absolute monster. Like a 35-ton mech with a large laser and 3 M lasers is insanely powerful. It looks, if you get the models, they look very much like the Panther. It's almost made like in admiration of the Panther, but it swaps the PPC out for the L laser and the SRMs with the M lasers. Trinity of M lasers in the chest. So they are like space Germans. They're again, in terms of like good and bad, there are grey areas in BattleTech, but they're not the worst. Like, they tend to look after their populace. The problem is with the Lyrans that they have a very like regimented system of like promotion in their like military. So their military just tends to be useless. They just tend to throw big assault mechs at the problem, which can work to their advantage, but it's not great. Eventually, and this game actually covers this a little bit, but the Federated Sons of the Lyran Commonwealth actually join together to create FedCom, which is a huge like by far the biggest like inner sphere power. Doesn't last too long though. Eventually there's a very bloody, horrible civil war, but in this game they're still both separate powers. There are then 3 periphery powers here. So I've talked a little bit already about the Magistracy of Canopus. They are ruled by women. It's kind of, I would imagine a lot of like new players would think, oh, they're like, it's like Space Las Vegas and it's all fun and everything. No, not really. They're like slave traffickers almost. There's a lot of horrible things that go on there. It is party town, don't get me wrong. I mean, if you were going to go and like have a good time in this universe, you probably would end up in a Canopian nightclub or something. So there are some good things about it. I mean, they're very up on like freedom and personal like liberty and things like that, but it's like the very extreme of that excess, which can lead to like lots of problems. They are the traditional enemies, really. I don't know if in this game, I don't think, yes, did they say that? Let's just have a look at the Magistracy of Canopus. See, it doesn't say, I did think this, I think I've seen this before. I always associated them as being the traditional enemies of the Free Worlds League. You can see, because they're in close proximity to them, for one. They're only, like, they do share a border. Doesn't say that here, though. I don't know if that's a mistake on the game part, or I don't know if that tension comes in at a later date. I do remember that they have a major issue with this world. No, one of these. Oh, where are you? Are you even in this? I'm sure you were in this. No, I might be wrong. There is it's Andurian or Anduria. I can't remember the actual name of the planet now. I wish I'd never brought that up. But there is a place in. I'm sure it's here. I'm sure that there's like a flashpoint on this somewhere. Maybe it's something else. I'm kind of just going to keep clicking on. No, I'm not going to find it. Let's just ignore that. I did think that there was a problem between them and the Free Worlds League, but by this game accounts, obviously not. Next up, we got the Taureans. The Taureans are super important to BattleTech, like really, really important. They're actually the cause of the fall of the Star League, which I'll document in a second, because they never kind of really buy into the whole Star League premise, which is like a united civilization. And they have like an insurrection and decide to kind of rebel against the Star League. This is hundreds of years before this game takes place. And they draw out the forces of the SLDF, which is the Star League Defense Force, which allows a tyrant to take power in the Taurean homogeny. And you effectively then have this like really interesting situation where a periphery power ends up like toppling the greatest thing ever known in human history in the Star League, and it all kind of takes place in and around this area here. So the capital, which is Taurus, and Samantha as well. Yeah, all these are quite like famous like systems in the BattleTech universe. And in this game, they're very important as well. They're very much like the antagonists in this game, which is kind of unfair because the Taureans are in my mind, like basically just like Space Texas. Like they want to be left alone. They are like fiercely independent and very proud. Like they are really Space Texas. If traditionally like the Free Worlds League are like Space America and the Taureans are like Space Texas. Free Worlds League being Space America, I don't necessarily agree with that, but similar. I can see why people would say that, but I think the Taureans, you can safely say they are Space Texas. And I like the Taureans, even though I'm a Fed Suns player, and they are traditional enemies with the Fed Suns. You see, they share a border there, and there's a lot of tensions between them. Those tensions come into play actually during this game. But Taureans are cool. I like them, and they've got cool mechs as well. Like they've got, I paint them red because they're like a faction that've got like red colour schemes. You can see there's its badge there. And then finally, we've got the Aries Directorate, which we're about to... Well, we will overthrow that during the Periphery Missions, and we will instead put in charge the Aries Restoration and our client. This is an area space called the Aries Reach. It's now canon in the BattleTech universe, so all the events that happen here legitimately happen. It's because the guy that actually helped either make this game or he's something very integral to it. It was actually... like one of the key people in the history of BattleTech, so what he says goes, I guess. So him and his team have developed the Aries Reach. It's now a thing. You can buy like source books for it. I've changed up my plans a little bit in terms of my tabletop, and I'm now going to create an Aries force. So they have been very influential in that respect, because even I'm doing it now on tabletop. And the Aries Directorate is kind of a tyranny, like a dictatorship, and the Aries Restoration is it's still kind of it's almost like a constitutional monarchy, I think you'd say, but Lady Arano is a very enlightened leader, whereas the leader of the Aries Directorate really isn't, as you will come to see as we play through this. So that's my like synopsis there of everything that's going on in the world and universe of BattleTech. I'll go very quickly back to the timeline, and then I'm going to finish the video because that'll cover everything pretty much. So I've gone through like all those dates. So that, again, the final creation, the Capellans were created in 2366. So between 2271 and 2366, you have the formation of the Great Houses, and you have the creation of the Terran Homogeny. You then there's almost a situation in BattleTech then where there is like this perpetual warfare and like a genocide almost. Like everyone just goes crazy. And all the inner sphere powers start to go to war with each other. There's like a land grab. Horrible things are done. There's like nuclear warfare, unrestricted warfare, total warfare. Millions, probably billions, die over like 200-year period. Until there is something in 2412 called the signing of the Aries Convention. And this is basically to put like limitations on warfare. In like our history, we have our own kind of conventions as well, like the Geneva Conventions, like very famous. I'd say that the Peace of Westphalia is actually more reflective of what happens in the Aries Convention, but that's a video for another day. And it effectively stops the use of nuclear weapons and unrestricted warfare. Now that in itself is fine, but what really kind of cements the Aries Convention is the creation of the first Battlemech, which takes place in 2439, so a few decades after the Aries Convention is signed. The first mech is created called the Maquis. And that really solidifies the Aries Convention because warfare then becomes restricted because you create these mechs and they can go to war with each other, and it's almost like knights fighting against each other on the battlefield. People buy into that. There's like a social change. So those two things together, the creation of the Maquis and the Aries Convention, create this warfare where people aren't just going around and nuking one another because they've got a medium almost to kind of, to have honourable combat which can decide things. Now, that's the idealistic thing, and that does happen a lot in BattleTech, but occasionally you do get the nuking of civilian populations. It happens. The Karita are pretty bad at it. The Capellans are pretty bad at it. But everyone does war crimes in BattleTech. It's kind of a thing. So, you've got to look at it like a lot less people died because of the signing of the Aries Convention and the creation of the Maquis. So probably a good thing overall. And those two things really kind of laid the foundations for the creation of the Star League. Because the Star League, or the factories in the Terran Homogeneities, started to basically really kind of design amazing mechs. So all those kind of early mechs that we know, things like the Griffin, which is a very early mech. Commando, I think, is the earliest mech in this game, strangely. Just going off the top of my head there. That is a very early mech design. And they then start to kind of sell these and give like the blueprints, or through espionage or through sales or whatever, to the Inner Sphere powers, and everyone starts making mechs. And the Star League at this time, like the Star League, think of it like, again, that federal system. The Terran Homogeny, which is ruled by a dynasty called House Cameron, they are like the first among equals. They become the leaders, they become the Star League in a lot of extents. And when the final Cameron dies, who's Richard Cameron, the Star League collapses. But there's kind of this golden era that exists between, I think it's 2570 and approximately 2766. That's the Star League era, so, like nearly 200 years. And everything just improves, like technology, science, medicine, technology, everything just like starts getting way, way better. You then have a situation, I've touched on this already, the SLDF, who was, that's like the military of the Star League, very controversial. I'm not going to go too much into this detail, but Richard Cameron, who is the last Lord of the Star League, basically wants to centralise the military. And not everyone's keen on that, obviously, because they would lose their power base, especially in Inner Sphere powers. The Inner Sphere powers don't kick off too badly, though, but the Taureans do. And the Taureans are like, we're not centralising like that, revolution time. So the SLDF is sent there to quell it. While that's quelling, a chap called Stefan Amaris, who is like the Hitler and Pol Pot of BattleTech, he basically murders poor Richard Cameron. He's only a young lad in his 20s when it happens as well, and it's horrible but entertaining. He basically gives him a gun, like a jewel-encrusted pistol for his birthday, and he's like a trusted advisor of Richard Cameron, and at his birthday celebration he then pulls out the gun and shoots poor Richard Cameron in the head. It's actually documented when you open this game up and you have that little intro video, that really amazing intro video, which gives like a synopsis of BattleTech. You see that for like a fleeting second. You see someone like pulling a gun on someone. That is Stefan Amaris shooting Richard Cameron. That causes the Amaris Civil War, which goes on between 2766 and 2780. Absolutely devastating. It's basically Kerensky versus Stefan Amaris, the SLDF versus the Rim World Republic, I think they're called, which is where Stefan Amaris came from, and the Terran Homogeny. The Inner Sphere powers kind of take a back seat. Horrendous civil war, lots of people die, but eventually the great Alexander Kerensky wins out, and Stefan Amaris is executed. And all is kind of put right, but not really, because Kerensky decides that he's going to jump away with all the SLDF to the periphery, the far north periphery, in fact, so the absolute opposite from where we are in this particular map, and then never seen from again, or at least people think so. And when I say they jump, it's not just like a couple of ships; it's literally an armada and approximately 6 million people. That's like all the SLDF, their support regiments, families, they just disappear into the ether. And what that causes, and Kerensky, as much as I get why he went, because he knew what was coming and he knew that it would tear itself apart and he'd be dragged into perpetual warfare he had the main force, so he wanted to he was looking after his people, really. But what it caused was a monumental power vacuum. A power vacuum that this game is still dealing with now. We are at the end here of the third succession wars, or the third succession war, and the succession wars go on between approximately 1780 and 3010. Approximately, they're the first three succession wars. There's also a fourth succession war as well, soon after this takes place. And these succession wars are absolutely devastating, and it throws all of humanity into a dark age. Not so, there is still civilization. There are, you can see from this map, there are still big powers, but everything is just worse. They've lost all the things that made them great. The Star League, what they now call lost tech, things that are just kind of lost to us. And yeah, like it's like a real regression of society. And in historical terms, it's kind of like what happened in. This is I might do a video on this one day, like how the Middle Ages isn't at all like a Dark Age, really. Like there was some amazing scientific advancements and engineering going on at that time, but I think people just assumed that like Rome left, and then it was just a Dark Age for many years. It's much more complicated than that. But in a sense, like the people that wrote this law had that in mind. It's like the Roman Empire, the Star League was destroyed, and then the aftermath of that was devastating for everybody. So that's where this game then takes place. This is 3025. Great, awesome. There are 3 more events, 2 which I'll touch on a little bit and 1 which I won't touch on at all. There are 3 more events after this, and I may reference this as we go through, so I'll just talk about them very quickly. The first is the War of 3039. This is when FedCom basically invades the Draconis Combine, and I think the Capellan Confederation gets some of it as well, but the kind of main target's the Draconis Combine. And when I say FedCom, that is the united powers between the Lyran Commonwealth and the Federated Suns. That's a very interesting war. Really, really interesting. The second big event, which is in 3050, which I've touched on, is the clan invasion. And that is the remnants of the SLDF, who basically jumped so far into the periphery no one can find them. They then come back and invade the inner sphere several hundred years later, and they've morphed into this horrendous society called the clans. They're like the ultimate bad guys. They're like eugenicists. I mean, whatever Kerensky's dream was for like society, they're like the absolute antithesis of that. They are awful. I love them. They are like wonderful bad guys, but they're awful. There are like variant levels of bad. For instance, like I say, like Clan Wolf and Clan Ghost Bear are actually okay, but Clan Smoke Jaguar and Clan Jade Falcon are a trash fire of evil. So yeah, there's different levels within the clans, and eventually, like I mean, I only play really from 3025, the end of the Succession Wars, through to 3068, which is the end of the FedCom Civil War. I will, like, that's kind of my set. There are things that happen after that, like the lore has been developed. I'm not interested in it really. So you do get into a situation where the clans actually eventually kind of integrate into inner sphere politics and join with some of the powers. For instance, like Clan Ghostbear join with the Rasselhag Republic. Yeah, great. I'd actually be interested in reading about that, because the Rasselhag Republic are quite interesting. They are the civil war of the Draconis Combine. So they're like Swedes in space. They're occupied by the Draconis Combine, and they have a revolution, much like whoever these Andurians were that I'm sure appears in this game somewhere. I'm gonna have to go back and try and find that. That's the Free Worlds League like civil war element. The Rasselhag Republic's like the Draconis Combines. So the clans eventually kind of just integrate. There is one more event as well. I'm not going to touch on this because it is the FedCom Civil War. That happens over a several year period. That's the kind of end of my like gameplay in BattleTech. That's the area that I kind of won't go further than that. After that, you get into something called the Word of Jihad. The Word of Blake Jihad. Or you get the after that you get the Dark Ages. Not interested in any of it. Don't like it, or what I've read of it. So my BattleTech experience ends when when FedCom basically collapses, and there is a horrible civil war between the Fed Sons and the Lyran Commonwealth. But it's very interesting because at that time they've got clan technology at that time, so it's a really amazing. Lots of great new mechs coming around, like the Bushwhacker. I've already hinted about the Wolfhound. Some great mechs, but outside the sphere of this game, it happens in the future. So, my goodness, I don't know how long that video went on for, or this episode, but it's probably a very long time, probably far too long. But I hope that gives you a full synopsis. For me, it's important to do that, because that's a guiding stone, a touchstone for me to go forward now. So I've detailed some of the basic lore. I've detailed kind of all the kind of mechanics that go on under the hood in this game. The next video, I will be talking about I'll go into the mech bay, which I'll just come out of here. I'll go into the mech bay and I'll discuss how to make the best out of your mech and all those little like mechanics that go on, which will give you success in this game. So I'm going to end that here and go for a very, very long drink of water because my throat is starting to give way here. So I'll hopefully catch you again next time, and have a good morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are.